So guys, in 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be going to Wembley Stadium. And that's going to mean a lot to me because I am going to be the first fan in AEW history to have done a calendar year of pay-per-views. I've been to every pay-per-view since AEW All Out 2025. And once I go to Wembley Stadium, that would be an entire calendar year. It means a lot to me because I'm very motivated. I'm very dedicated. Um, I like to challenge myself. I believe in myself. I used to do filmmaking in Connecticut. I was treated like a fucking nigger because I've had people, treat me like I'm stupid. I've had people just call me the black director, the black filmmaker. I told my story about when I did the 40-hour film project. When I went on stage, I told the audience that I struggled with suicidal thoughts and depression and PTSD because I worked at a job or dealt with bullying. I worked at a job that had bullying so severe that the store was robbed by its own security guards, cops aiming guns at me, and for a long time I struggled with PTSD. And then when I did the 48-hour film project, I told an audience about my struggle, and people were laughing at me. They were treating me like I was an autistic special needs person sharing too much. It made me want to give up filmmaking, it made me want to kill myself for a couple of years. But I've managed to rise. I've had my parents say, hey, I don't want to hear about it. I want medication on you. Medication. I was so self-destructive. I was so hurting. I was so sad. I lost the best job that I had. And then I started working in the hospital. I went there. I atoned for my sins for many, many years. I visited all 50 states. I fell in love with AEW because of the acclaim. In the past couple of years, I've gone to AEW shows to help me achieve my goal of visiting all 50 states, and now I'm in love with AEW. So I go to every pay-per-view that I can, and now I have a year straight of going to AEW shows. And the biggest show of the year, in one of the biggest stadiums in the world. I've gone to Arena Mexico. I've gone to the fucking Tokyo Dome. I've gone to Madison Square Garden. Yeah, Lil Benedict Arnold. I went to WWE, slapped me in the face one time for doing that. But now I'm going to go to Wembley Stadium, and I'm going to hit the big four. It means a lot. It hits me in the fucking soul, baby. It hits me in the fucking soul that I'm fucking doing that. Wembley Stadium means a lot to me. It's me achieving my American dream. And I don't give a fuck if AEW recognizes it or not. I don't give a fuck if anybody recognizes it or not. It means a lot to me. I am a legendary man. And that's not arrogance. That's me believing in me. That's me saying, hey, nobody tells me what to do. Nobody puts me down. When people look at me as a nigger, when people look at me as autistic, when people look at me as somebody to knock down very easily or to think that I am stupid, I rise up and I have all those motherfucking challenges. My aunt died, and nobody told me that she died of cancer. I found out 3 or 4 years after she died that she died of cancer, and that really hurt me, and she inspired me to travel. I have so much pain in my heart. I have so much pain in my soul, but I keep on going. I keep on fighting with my soul to be the best human being that I can be and challenge myself. It reminds me of that saying from Pulp Fiction, I am the tyranny of evil men, but I'm working so hard to be the shepherd. I have a lot of pain that's driving me insane. I have a lot of pain that makes me want to go down the path of darkness, the path of hate, really. But I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to be like my boy Naruto and break the cycle of hate in my own heart and in my own society and be the best person that I can be. And having goals has done that. Having goals has kept me on the righteous path. Having goals has inspired me to get my shit together, to work at that motherfucking hospital that I work at, 65 hours a week to 100 hours a week. And Wembley Stadium is a landmark accomplishment to me. Fuck hurricane season and fuck JFK Airport and fuck travel delays. I'm going to do whatever the motherfucking can to be there because it means so fucking much to me. It means so fucking much for me to go there. So I can't be yelling and screaming, you guys, because I have neighbors and they'll be knocking on my door, really. But that's an example of a promo. That's an example of Wembley Stadium means a lot to me. Wembley Stadium means a lot to me to go to one of the biggest arenas in the world. And when I look at AEW, there's only 2 wrestlers on that roster that have that same type of vigor. And that is Will Ospreay, and that's also MJF. And I really think with every other story that I see, that everybody is very much a plain Jane when it comes to Wembley Stadium. There's no bigness, there's no excitement, there's no I'm going to the biggest show of the year. One thing I like about WWE is that every wrestler has that type of, I'm going to WrestleMania. I want to have a feud at WrestleMania. WrestleMania is a big deal to me because when I die, I go into history books. If I prove myself at WrestleMania, this launches my career. Everything in the world is about WrestleMania. Like, I would say Shawn Michaels did the best, really. Like, especially when he lost to the Undertaker one year, and it was like, he was like Captain Ahab. Like, this was my obsession, to beat the Undertaker. And he went to the Elimination Chamber, gave him the super kick. He got his wishes, and then he lost, really. But I don't feel that there's any other wrestler on that roster that acts like Wembley Stadium is a big deal to them. And I think that's one of the big struggles with AEW right now, really. And I think that's what's also hurting the show. And I also feel, and this needs to be a video essay, because I think that there's so much predictability with a lot of these matches. Like, it's almost like you really, really know who's going to win with everything that you saw, really. So I want to talk about the show and talk about my criticisms. The first thing was the Will Ospreay promo, and there was really nothing out of this. This really felt like a huge recap of, the story of Will Ospreay and Don Callis, really. But the only interesting about this was that it mentioned that last year, Will Ospreay's grandfather died. God rest his soul. And, it was very hard for him, but he kept on going. He kept on fighting, really. And that was also true that my aunt died, like, many, many years ago. And it made me very mad because I was told 4 or 5 years after she died that I was struggling with cancer, and she died, really. And that made me very sad that my relatives didn't tell me that. And one of the reasons why that happened was because I was just not talking to my family for many years. And one of the reasons why I didn't talk to my family for many years is because they were also very controlling. I was going through depression and PTSD, and they were just like, hey, you know what? Put yourself on medication, whatever. And they're really big about it, when I just needed to find my own path, learn from my mistakes, and build myself upwards. And, I built myself upwards, and my older brother, Matt, the mother, that nigga really just, is motivating me to get my shit together, and I've done that. But yeah, that was really human that he said that. We all connect that. It makes me really sad what he said, that, one of the saddest things about this is that, he's not going to be at his grandson's wedding and all that, really, man. Sorry for you, Will Ospreay. Sorry for you, Will Ospreay. You consider me family. If I was there, I'll be polite, I'll be respectful, I'll be styling and profiling in a suit. I would be an extra family member, but I'm sorry as all fucking hell, sorry as all fucking hell that your grandfather died. But that was very human and everything like that, really. But it kind of led to the same thing that we've been seeing, that Will Ospreay says all this shit. Don Callis' family ambushes him. He gets rescued by Kenny Omega, and then I really think that Kenny Omega is all just saying the thing too, you're on your own will, or and all that same stuff, you're on your own will, you're underestimating yourself, and other things like that. So it just kind of felt like a repeat. There was no new information, really. There was no, this is 2 weeks away, and everything like that, really. Or maybe the Don Callis family, but maybe they could have done something where the Don Callis family says, you know what, I'm going to actually beat your asses, so we don't have a main event. They're going to have to find new people for the main event. It's going to be Kyle Fletcher and Okada or something like that, really. And then there could be a tag team of, next week, there'd be a tag team of Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega versus, maybe Kyle Fletcher and Okada. And that could be really interesting. Or you do, Kyle Fletcher. No, you could do even you can do 3 people. You can even have MJF, MJF, Kenny Omega, and Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher, Okada, and maybe Mark Davis or somebody else, really, because WWE would always do that too before WrestleMania, where they would have the people that are in conflict with each other versus 3 other people and stuff like that, really, because I think that would be a way to say, hey, what page are they on, really, type of thing, really, even if you throw in another person that is unstable. So I think that would have been the way to do it, because that's what WWE does. But again, I didn't really see. I saw some of Will Ospreay care about Wembley Stadium, but I didn't really see anybody else. The next thing I want to mention is, before I forget, is that they did a segment with Willow Nightingale. Like Willow Nightingale, she's like Foxy Brown. She's beautiful. She's sexy. She can kick anybody's ass, and she can kick my ass too. And a lot of people saying that she should be a model, and absolutely, really, she's just like a rose. She has the beauty. She has the beauty and the thorns with her, really. And she was being whipped by Mercedes Moné with a belt, really. Now, like I said, I wish that was me. I wish Mercedes Moné was kicking my ass, and I wish Willow was kicking my ass because they're both beautiful cases of brown sugar, really. They both have that Foxy Brown thing about them. They have the sexy. They have the don't. I take shit from nobody, and they keep everybody in check. Really, that's almost like how Wrestle Toddy is as well. Really, but like I said, I like that's the perfect type of woman to me, the sexy and the badass, type of thing, really. That's why Pam Grier, Foxy Brown is of the most beautiful women in the world. Um, but yeah, that was definitely very hot, and I can't wait to see these two sexy, beautiful, bad bitches, really take care of each other. That was a really great segment. Um, but again, there was no sense of I'm Mercedes. I want to win at Wembley Stadium. What does Wembley Stadium mean to me? What does winning the biggest show of the year mean to me? What does embarrassing Willow the biggest show of the year mean to Mercedes? I think that articulation would be helpful, really. And I also think that another thing that sucked was the Megan Bain and Camille promo. I think it's Luna Cross or whoever her name is, but they did that dumbass segment where they just all they did was go into the Brawling Birds bar and they just dropped like 2 mugs of beer. Like that's it. That's very anticlimactic. They should just burn down that bitch. They should take it to another level. But I really just don't. That was kind of anticlimactic, really. The next thing was that you had MJF. Like MJF. You had Nick Wayne, and you had Speedball Mike Bailey. Cocaine in the can, baby, and it was a good match. Good flips from Speedball Mike Bailey, but obviously you knew who was going to win. And this is the same type of, and I think with MJF, it's the same old shit with him. It's him being an outspoken scumbag. There's some like humor about him just really manipulating people, and then he ends up getting the win, really. So and then he does a promo, and then like I said before, and I'll say it again, that he's the only other wrestler that has a lot of like vigor, like this mean if I'm using the word correctly, he has a lot of emphasis or a lot of bump. Like I deserve to be the champion. I'm obsessed with being the champion. Everybody, I'm the shark in the water, really, and I'm the shark in the water, and everybody else is blood. So that means so like and I appreciate that, but it's the same old. I do appreciate that, even though that's kind of MJF's shtick, really, is that I'm gonna be a scumbag to get what I want, really. I am a little worried because I think this year Kyle Fletcher, if they put Kyle Fletcher in 2 matches this year, Kyle Fletcher should be winning this, or Andrade, because I do not like repeats. But it makes sense for MJF to win, because if you do MJF versus Will Ospreay at All Out Part 3, no problem. The next matches you had Jay White versus Dave Finlay. All right, it was an okay match. I obviously didn't care about the match because obviously you knew who was going to win. You knew Jay White's going to win because Jay White just came back. They're really high on him. I really wish that there was a trios tournament, or I really wish there was a huge trios feud for the trios titles. Because there's so many really talented teams, like, Dalton Castle and the Outrunners, and then you have the Dogs, and then you have the Bang Bang Gang, and then you have the Conglomeration, and then you have Don Cal's family. You have the Rascals, and I also think that I'm going to have to do a video essay about that too, about like, I think how underrated the Trish division is. And then also you have Shane Mother Tough fucking Taylor, the baddest man on the roster, really. But I think that's what they should be doing. Or they should have like maybe a tournament or a gauntlet, and then you take the trios. Then whoever wins that faces the trios champions at AEW All Out. Like there should be a way to celebrate the trios teams, because I think there's a lot of really talented people. And I think if they kind of build up a tournament or a gauntlet, or this trios wants to be in this thing, wants to be in this tournament, or wants to be at Wembley, or they're gonna do like a trio, like, or even if you did something like maybe a tournament, like it's for, like you get down to like maybe 16, you have 16 trios teams, and you get down to 4 teams, and those 4 teams face each other at AEW, Wembley Stadium. The winner of that will face the champions at All Out. I think that's the way to do that. But I really think they're underutilizing their trios division. The other reason why I say that is because you had the Swerve and Hangman promo, and there's this guy named I Am Zane, great YouTuber, and he was predicting that you're gonna get the good, the bad, the ugly, Brody King, Adam Page, and Bandito versus Swerve, and more likely you're gonna get Consequences Creed and Kofi Kingston next week. And I think that that's going to be a great 3 versus 3 match. I think that's what they're going to do. And it's also a good match because, they're kind of like the same body type. And if I remembered, Swerve is a very strong guy, really. So even though he's not a big body like Samoa Joe, if he can go with Brody King, or if you have if he can go with Brody King, that would be good, really. Because you kind of have a good 3 versus 3, really. But you have to make sure you have somebody or 1 or 2 wrestlers that can work with Brody King, because obviously when you look at their team, it's like 1 big man and 2 like medium-sized people, really. So it's gonna be really interesting, dynamic to see 3 smaller people and 3 mid-sized people, Swerve, Kofi Kingston, and Consequences Creed, if they decide to do that match next week, if they decide to do that match at Wembley Stadium. And I think that's what they're going to do. And that's kind of why I say, have for the trios title, and the winner of that's going to face a number 1 contender at All Out, really. And I think that's the way to do it. The next match that you have is, I think you had a couple other matches on the show. I know they had a 4-way match for the TBS Championship. Why do I care? Because we know that now the world's going to win. And I think they had some other matches on the show that were either jobber, but always a very predictable winner. And then the main event, and then they announced 2 matches that are going to happen. They announced that's going to be a triple threat. It's going to be Okada, Takeshita, and Kyle Fletcher. I'm not happy with this because I think it should be Okada, Kyle Fletcher. That's a better story to tell. They're going to put Takeshita in this for 2 reasons. Number 1, he deserves a big spot. He's a great wrestler. He's underrated. He and Okada had a great match, but I also just think that that's not a good dynamic. I'm not sure how to say this. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker is a great match, but if you did Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and Bryan Danielson in a triple threat, really, that seems like, you may not get that type of... It may be a little too much, really. It may be how do you tell a compelling match with 3 people? You would have to kind of make it really good because both these guys are athletic and everything like that. So I was wondering how you're going to have the athleticism with 3 different people at the same time. So it's going to be really interesting. But, Takeshita deserves to be recognized, but I think that I would have had him in the Casino Gauntlet if I was booking. I would have done Kyle Fletcher versus Okada. And then you done promos about what this mean and how maybe Kyle Fletcher feels a little betrayed that Don is putting him in that situation. Really, hey, aren't we on the same team? Even though your philosophy is that we fight out problems, I shouldn't be in this situation. The next thing that happened was the main event tonight. That's the last thing that I remember. Before I forget, there was Chris Jericho versus Kevin Knight. Again, didn't care about the match because it was predictable. I think it would have been a surprise if Chris Jericho won, but it would upset a lot of people because they'll be hey, you're kind of, this is TNA wrestling where you're putting the title on, you're taking the title off of somebody and putting it on an older guy from WWE. So he didn't deserve to win it because people would have had that feeling. But the thing about it was that the reason why they had this match is obviously to put another feather in Kevin Knight's cap row by saying, hey, now he beated 2 former AEW champions. He's beaten Darby Allin and he's also beaten Chris Jericho. But obviously, beating Chris Jericho is good for a resume. So I really think that I'm happy that they're working hard with Kevin Knight. You put Kevin Knight on the pay-per-view. He has he is a draw. He's a talent. You had to make him feel like a big deal. And obviously, being Chris Jericho is a way to elevate him. I appreciate that they are building new stars, and Kevin Knight's really stepped up to the occasion because every single year you got to build up new stars. Look at Obafemi this year. Great example in WWE. You have to keep building new stars every year, or it's like, what do we do with these people? The next match, the main event of the night, they also announced that it's going to be Darby Allin versus Kevin Knight, Falls Count Anywhere. I'm really cool with this match because Kevin Knight's never been in a hardcore match before. I know we had that 5-way match at Forbidden Door, but but he's not really a hardcore wrestler. So I'm okay with this because, with Wembley Stadium, it's okay to have at least one hardcore match because that's what AEW is about, really. They do hardcore wrestling. They do it very well. They do bloody wrestling very well. It's okay to have that maybe once a show to say, hey fans, this is what we do. But again, I'm also happy this year because the main event is Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. It's not like this fucking death match shit because you can't always do that every single year. Or I'm not sure. You can't do that every single year. And last year they did a Texas death match, which was cool. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But but they've also had a pattern of main events of pay-per-views always having death matches. So I'm very, very happy that they're not doing a death match at Wembley Stadium as a main event. Again, this is AEW. This is not Combat Zone Wrestling. You save that shit for Combat Zone Wrestling or ECW. But yeah, that being the hardcore match, having Darby in it is good. But again, it would have been a lot better if Darby Allin came out with the microphone. He talked shit to Kevin Knight. Kevin Knight just got up. He started yelling and talking shit on the microphone. Kevin Knight talks about saying, "I'm going to embarrass you at Wembley Stadium. The biggest show of the year. I'm going to show everybody why I'm the Jet, and you're like the fucking emo kid, or you're just a goth bitch or something like that. Really, imagine if they came out, they talked about that, they put that emphasis. That would have been the way to do that, but they didn't. The next match that you had was Jon Moxley versus Jack Perry, and this was a bad match because I think you would have gotten a lot of attention if Jack Perry beat Jon Moxley, and you're like, hey, he's a new star, or hey, you know what, there's some fight in this kid. I think this was a time where Jon Moxley should have humbled himself, and he should have had Jack Perry beat him, because I think they told a really good story that this was 50-50. Jack Perry was digging deep. He was throwing everything at him, but Jon Moxley wins. And I think my big fear is that Jon Moxley should not win. And I don't have time today, but I'll do a video about that in the future. But Jon Moxley should not win this tournament for two reasons. That number one, I do not like tournaments where the champion wins, because it's almost like you did all this for a couple of weeks and you're getting to the same spot again. The next thing is that if you do Claudio versus the best match they can do is Claudio versus Jon Moxley, and then Claudio takes over the Death Riders, and then you get rid of Jon Moxley leading the Death Riders, because there has to be some level of storytelling, changing something, doing something different. And the Death Riders has run its course, really. And one of the big stories would be, hey, with Moxley, he was the only champion in that group. But now Claudio's going to say, hey, I expect more about everybody. I want to discipline everybody. Look at me. I'm a guy who can swing the big show and everything like that. I'm the rightful leader of all this. So I really, really think that that's a better direction. That's a better story to tell, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to do Moxley versus Eddie Kingston, have Moxley beat Eddie Kingston, and then maybe at the end of the year, they may have Moxley retain or not retain. But I think that this was just like saying, everything was just way, way too predictable on the show, and I didn't really enjoy it. And I didn't really enjoy how a lot of wrestlers on this roster didn't feel like, okay, I'm going to a really big show. I'm going to be around 40,000 people. I forgot how many people they had last year, but I think they said it was like 22,000 or 23,000 in Texas. But this year they have close to They're going to have 40,000. They're still selling tickets. I think WrestleTix said it's 36 or 37, but I'm very sure it's going to hit 40,000. But that's good. I actually think that's their second biggest one. I don't remember how much they had the second time they went to Wembley, but I think it was 35,000. So they're actually doing a little bit better. This is their second biggest show. But imagine if they've emphasized story. Imagine if wrestlers had a lot more vigor and they could be getting to like 50,000 or maybe like 55,000 if they kind of probably did a lot more. They made this feel like a big deal. I don't really think that they're doing that. And then also this is bad too because this is Vegas, and there's two things about Las Vegas. They could make World's End in Vegas this year, like their last pay per view, because they've announced four pay per views. It's going to be All In, All Out, Wrestle Dream Full Gear. But they could have just done a lot in this show because this is Vegas. It's one of the most. This is probably the second most famous city in the United States. Or they could have done a lot for the show. This could have been the go home show instead of going to fucking Baltimore. I think it was like Baltimore, Reading, Pennsylvania is their go home show to the pay per view, but to the pay per view in the U.S. or something like that. And then they're doing a show in Glasgow, Scotland, or something like that. But my point of it is this: that I think that they could have had a lot more emphasis. This could have been a major show. This could have been like everybody is driven to go to this event because it's such a big deal to everybody, really. So that's kind of why I come at promo in the beginning by saying, hey, you know what? If I was a wrestler on the roster, I would be saying all that shit to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to Wembley Stadium because it means a lot to me. And I want everybody to understand my hurt, my journey, my wounds to get to that point. And I don't really see a lot of other wrestlers doing that outside of MJF and Will Ospreay.